Oh, hi Internet, it's Punchin here again for another live Q&A. I thought I'd bash one out since I had about 10 minutes. So, here we are. Got a bit comfy, but I printed them out again as normal. I say printed them out, it's absolutely wrong. I put them on my phone so I can get to them quickly. So I've got three most popular questions this week on my page, but if you've got any more, then please by all means chuck them down here as I talk, and I'll deal with them at the time as well. Or if you miss this and watch it in the replay, then by all means still chuck them down there and I will get back to it later. I'll circle around. But let's bash them in, shall we? Alright, so let's have a look. First one, this is quite a cool one, one which is quite something that a lot of people are probably thinking actually. What is the actual difference between metabolic resistance training and HIIT? And HIIT, also shortened to HIIT, obviously, not to be confused with HIIT, which is also HIIT. Is short for high intensity interval training, and basically it's very popular at the moment. It's a very popular kind of style of training at the moment. It's a bit of a buzzword. But basically high intensity interval training, what it basically means is that you are training, the short version is that you're training at a high intensity for a short period of time, because if it's high intensity then you can't sustain it for very long by definition, and then you rest for a period of time, normally a shorter period of time, and then you go again, and it takes many forms. For example, Tabata training, for example, is an example of high intensity interval training, where you would do 20 seconds of all out work and then 10 seconds of rest, and then 20 seconds of all out work, 10 seconds of rest, and so on and so forth. And there's various different modalities you can use there, as long as it provides fits the interval model. So basically that's what high intensity interval training is. Now metabolic resistance training is a little bit different. It can fall into the HIIT umbrella, because the main key about metabolic, there's my cat in the background, can you see? Yeah, the main key with metabolic resistance training is that the key word there is resistance training, and that the exercises that you tend to use in metabolic resistance training, for the majority at least of the workout, are resistance-based exercises. So they might be weights exercises, they might be body weight exercises such as push-ups, such as squats, and so on and so forth. Whereas high-intensity interval training doesn't necessarily have to use those particular types of exercises. For the most part, it might be entirely cardio. You might do, for example, entirely cycling for that time. You might, if you were to do it as a Tabata, you might cycle for 20 seconds and then rest for 10 and so on, and that might be exclusively what you do. So a metabolic resistance training workout can be a HIIT workout, and vice versa, but they're not necessarily the same thing. Okay? Yeah, good. Hopefully that makes some sense. Right, excuse me, my phone went off there. Right, what if I can actually consistently work out every day? Should I, or should I have rest days? Good question. I did another live video a couple of days back, which was explaining how often you should work out every day. And, sorry, let's rephrase that, how often you should work out a week. And basically, long story short, you want to make sure you're getting your rest days in there, and actually what's more important is frequency, consistency rather than frequency. Let's see if I can get some of my words around the right way before the end of this broadcast. Yeah, so basically the question was, and actually I think this was on the back of this video, was what if I actually can't work out every day? Should I? Well, no, not really. Basically there's no real benefit to doing that, and you will reach a point of diminishing returns. But also, of course, you can run into the problem that is overtraining, which will manifest itself in many different symptoms, such as tiredness, injury, and it can actually slow your progress if you don't allow those rest days in between. So if you can work out every day, then doesn't mean you should, yeah? And your best bet is to make sure you have those rest days in, whether that's 2 rest days a week, or whether that's 3 rest days a week, or even 1, but at least get a rest day in so you can do that. And potentially a recovery week every few weeks as well to get that going. Now, what you can do every day is activity. For example, know the difference between exercise, formal exercise, which is performed to a specific intensity to get a specific response. Whereas activity, for example, going for a walk, throwing a frisbee, running around the park with your kids, that kind of thing. Again, that you can do on an almost daily basis, because it's generally not intense enough or long enough, or should I say both, to interfere with your actual recovery ability and your results that you'll get because of that. So yeah, by all means be active on a daily basis, but you don't need to actually specifically work out every day. And if you do, it can be more harmful than it is beneficial. Yeah, cool. What's the other one here? What's your thoughts on cutting gluten/wheat from your diet with no diagnosed intolerance, and will this help stop bloating or have any benefits whatsoever? Right, short answer, no, not really. Basically, unless you have an actual intolerance, and that's a very, very tiny percentage of people, in this country at least, it's only about 6% of people in this country that have an intolerance, then there's no benefit at all to cutting that out. Now, different people have various levels of intolerance of various different things as well. For example, some people are mildly intolerant to dairy, and some people are mildly intolerant to wheat, absolutely, and some people are hugely intolerant. But like I say, it's such a tiny, tiny proportion. And if you do have an intolerance, absolutely, by all means, get those out. In 90% of cases, if you do, actually all you need to do is reduce those things, as opposed to cut them out completely. And they can also be very specific to specific foods. But for the vast, vast majority of people, there is absolutely no benefit to cutting out wheat, gluten, or dairy necessarily. You can just continue as normal. However, the other thing to take into account here is if you do want to cut some of those things out, to try and avoid the specific, for example, if you're cutting out gluten, try and avoid gluten-free foods, for example. By that I mean actual foods that are engineered to be gluten-free, because on most of the case, I actually did some studies on this, and in most cases, and when I say most, I mean the vast majority of cases, those foods had more calories and more nasties, for lack of a better term, than the actual original food that had the gluten in the first place. So you're better off actually just cutting out those foods that, cause you to be intolerant. Otherwise, you're just replacing one thing that is bad for something that is probably worse. And if in doubt, check the ingredients on these things, because they normally have an ingredients list as long as your arm. Yeah, they're ridiculous because of the amount of crap that's in them. Yeah, cool. So basically, unless you actually do have a genuine gluten or wheat intolerance, which, like I say, is about 6% of the population in this country, it's a very, very tiny percentage, then no, there's absolutely no benefit to cutting it out at all. So, you may need to moderate it, because some foods can cause, some not very nice side effects sometimes if you eat too many of them, but that's the case with a lot of foods. So it's not necessarily because of wheat, necessarily because of gluten or anything like that. Yeah, cool. So hopefully that's cleared those up. If you've got any more questions, then by all means chuck them in either on this video or anywhere on the page really, and I'll hopefully grab them before the next one, and I'll do another live Q&A probably in about a week's time, which will be pretty cool. And if you've got any, chuck them on, and I'll come back. And if it's a short question, I can even answer it here. If not, then we'll get it in a live Q&A, so you'll see it then. But otherwise, Space Cadets, I will catch up with you next time. And yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Have an awesome Sunday evening.